I'm too sad to do a proper intro, really, because I'm still reeling from last night, and I'm sure you are as well. It was UFC 298. See, look, this is what I mean. I'm all over the place. UFC 298, Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria, headlining. And you can probably tell by our reactions, it did not go the way we wanted. But I will say, according to my brain, it went the way I expected. I just wish I listened to it instead of my heart, because my heart made the prediction that Alexander Volkanovski was going to get a finish inside 3 rounds. That obviously didn't go to plan. What was your thoughts?
Honestly, I'm not exaggerating when I feel like I'm in a day of mourning, being deadly serious. I think there's a few people in the MMA world that is. I need to say from the get, all props to Ilia Topuria, by the way. All props to him along the whole process. It just so happens that he happens to fall victim as the opponent that faces Volkanovski. But where do I even begin? Where do I even begin? There's so much to unpack.
Rough, man.
In all honesty, there's so much to unpack. So let's get stuck into it from my initial thoughts for the event, because I'll be honest, the more I was watching some tape, the more I was watching their recent fights, the more I thought, you know what? I'm getting more confidence in Volkanovski doing what Volkanovski does. However, you get this feeling as someone that watches the sport for quite a long time. You get this deep gut feeling when the events are happening, whether it's the walkouts, whether it's just before the build-up. And there was nothing really that gave it away. It wasn't Volk on the walkout. It wasn't Ilya looking particularly confident. It wasn't anything in particular. It was just this deep gut feeling when I realised...
You just know, don't you?
All the emotions sort of subsided and all the facts prevailed in this moment of clarity. And then it sort of hit me. Before they even stepped into the cage with each other, I just realised this is going to be the moment. This is going to be the moment for me as a newer fan, that I am following someone's journey and they happen to be a champion and they're at the peak of their powers for a very long time. And I have to watch the demise. I have to watch the demise. And I just knew in the pit of my stomach that this was going to be the case. And before I get stuck into my breakdown and assessment of the fight and whatever else, did you have a similar sort of feeling?
Yeah, completely. I mean, my brain, honestly, the last month, in the build up to this event and on my live stream as well, I had a lot of people, with conflicting opinions, but I was so set on Topuria for a long time. And then when we discussed it briefly, we talked about it on the podcast the other week, and I began to sway my opinion a little bit. And I was like, maybe he's going to wind back the clock. And as you said, it's all about facts. Facts prevailed. I was looking at all the data, all the stats. Over 35 years old, champion. He's got the less mileage than most, so that was the outlier. But time's undefeated, man. And I didn't listen to my brain when it came to fight night. And that was the reality. And Topuria brutally finished him, and it hurts to watch. I described it as like watching a relative just get get killed. Do you know what I mean? It's like not on that level, but it's just like it's like your dad. It looks like the guy you love. Do you know what I mean? It's the guy you've watched and seen grow, and you're like, it was brutal. It was a brutal finish, but all credit to Topuria, and he's at 27 in the prime of his career. And if the previous featherweight champs have anything to go by, this one's going to have a long reign ahead of him. And I can't see anyone in that division really right now off the top of my head beating him. So all credit to Topuria. That right-hand power remains true.
I think coming into the fight, when I broke it down and I was just quite objective and quite unemotional, the way that I saw it was Volk has to do what Volk does very well, which is, in truth, he has a lot of different styles and he blends them depending on who he's preparing for. So sometimes it's slightly more offensive, sometimes he's drawing people onto shots, and sometimes he's utilizing more lateral movement. Now, anyone that fights Ilia Topuria has to do a fantastic job at using lateral movement. And it may sound like a strange example, but someone that done that very well until they didn't was Jai Herbert. And I actually done a breakdown of that fight this week. And that was something that he was doing very, very well. But the thing that Ilia always wants to do, he always wants to back his opponent against the cage. He wants to get them behind the black line. He wants to get them planted. Just for a second, he wants them planted. And if he can, he wants to square them up.
That's exactly.
Usually what he does is just micro steps, micro shifts in direction just to change his angles. He's got really nice soft knees in the pocket so he can roll undershots. He can manipulate his body quite easily. And he usually always goes to the body as a rangefinder, and then he usually goes upstairs with his hooks. And it was pretty much a very similar story. And we heard Volk talk about in the post-fight press conference that he wasn't meant to be in that spot. And Ilia done a fantastic job of getting Volk into his wheelhouse. And they mentioned on commentary, and it was a very good point, and it's easier said than done, of course, sitting here in my armchair. Volk is so fantastic at doing that, and he's always been able to be very evasive. The slight thing that was putting me on edge in that first round was just how he was sort of exiting the pocket. Just with his sort of chin a little bit pulled, like this, and 100%. Just exiting. And that wasn't even necessarily the downfall. That wasn't even necessarily what done it. But what it was is Ilia is, I don't want to say weakest, but not as effective when moving backwards. And Volk was drawing him onto things, which typically works. And he's done it so well against so many different fighters. He was moving laterally and bringing him onto shots. But he had to back him up. And he wasn't backing him up at any point. And it sort of goes to show not only maybe the game plan of Volkanovski maybe in the earlier rounds, but also Ilia didn't have a lot of respect for his power. We know how hard Volk is. We know how strong he is. We know how incredible he is of a striker. But Ilia coming into it said, he isn't a knockout artist. He's not going to knock me out. And you sort of saw that lack of respect, really. The way that he just stalked him, he backed him up, he cut him off in very, very micro steps. And as soon, the first time in the fight, that he managed to get his back against that cage, and it was absolutely perfect because not only was it a slight micro adjustment to the right to line up his right hand, but he also managed to circle Volk just on the pad of the pillar of the octagon where your shoulders are perfectly square. And that is the worst position to be in when you have someone like Ilia Topuria, because he's going to let his combinations go, and we said this for as long as time. When he does that, does it with bad intentions, and more often than not, he puts you out cold. And I have to say, I'll let you say your piece on this, and then I've got another point to make. But I have to say, as horrible as that was to watch, it was incredibly impressive.
Absolutely. I'm always annoyed because you said a lot of what I was going to say. You make a great point about the lateral movement. No, seriously though, like when I was watching that fight, I was literally acknowledging it mid-fight about the lateral movement. I was sort of in my head mentally going back to Topuria's previous fights and thinking about how well he does against people that are willing to plant their feet and trade with him. Josh Emmett, probably the best example, because he's a power puncher. He has to load up those shots and be stationary. Guy like Volkanovski, in most instances, wasn't going to offer him that. And for the first round, I thought he looked pretty good. And it was a competitive round against, you're fighting an elite level striker in Topuria. And I'd say Volk closed out the first round pretty convincingly. But there was that little lapse. And whether it was on his end or Topuria doing a good job of cutting the cage off, as you said, the moment he caught him in that pocket, or both, it was lights out, and that's all a guy like Topuria needs. It's just, incredible performance. And I will say, you make a good point again about Volkanovski probably should have engaged on the front foot a little bit more. I think Bisping pointed that out. Yeah. And really a credit to Bisping, actually, the whole card. I think he had some really good analysis moments in the whole card. I think in the Paulo Costa Whittaker fight, which we'll get into, about looking for the high kick, which I was screaming for at my screen for Whittaker to throw that kick at the end of a combination, or just naked, to be honest, because he'd set it up with that calf kick. Sorry, we're doing a little tangent there, but I mean, going back to Topuria, I think it's just a new era, and I think we acknowledged that before. I think you could see it, you could feel the energy. It was just his time, the changing of the guard, and hats off to him. Yeah.
I think the thing is with Volk as well, there are very few chinks in Ilia Topuria's armor. The man went into the fight undefeated, finished mostly all of his opponents, and wasn't really in a lot of danger in many of his fights. Yeah, he got punched, but you're not going to walk out into the rain and not get wet. So you can't find someone without getting hit unless your name's Hamza Chimaev a few fights into your career. But what
Yeah.
Volk, what I said quite a few times, to be perfectly honest, I said this a lot of times in build-ups and breakdowns and all things, the small chink in the armour that we saw from Ilia Topuria was the left high kick. That was the small chink in his armour. And in the first round, I saw, well, actually going into some training footage, I saw Volk drilling that. And that's something that he's used throughout his career. He used it against Max, he used it against Yair Rodriguez, even Korean Zombie, I believe. So it's not as if he would have had to integrate that specially for him, that left high kick, because he's got unbelievable kicking dexterity and diversity, Volk. And I just wondered, I knew obviously
I wasn't a fan of it.
He was going to be so well researched, I knew he was going to be so well studied that they would have picked up on anything. I was just very interested. This isn't necessarily a very thought-provoking point. I was just really interested in the fact that he threw that in the first exchange. He threw that in the first exchange, strike. Which I was not confused about. I sort of felt like he was going to keep that a little bit in his back pocket, if you like, and set that up a little bit later down the line. And I'm not here trying to give the greatest featherweight of all
Joe
time.
Lopez.
I'm just giving
Joe
you
Lopez and Alexander Volkanovski. Let's
honestly geniuses
no, I get
of
what you're
the
saying,
game.
Though. I do get what you're saying.
I'm just calling it how I see it. I was just a little bit surprised when I was watching it in live time. I knew he'd been drilling that. I knew that had been a weakness of Ilia to some respect. And I'm not saying the fight would have been completely different. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. I'm just saying, you know how good the kicking game is, Volk, and how he has the inside calf kick, the outside, how he goes to the body nice from southpaw and orthodox. I was just surprised that he sort of showed that hand quite early. But the last thing that I'll sort of say on this fight, or maybe the penultimate thing either, is for so many years now, we hear anybody who is slightly brash on the mic, who is slightly confident, who is slightly arrogant, who is slightly cocky, who has some knockout power, and whoever floats around that 145-pound weight division, we get them likened to a certain man, Conor McGregor. And when we have a look at this man's journey, we have a look at the man's back tattoo, we have a look at his chest tattoo, we have a look at the fact that he came into this fight completely undefeated against, for all intents and purposes, the number one pound for pound, undefeated in the division, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, to ever doing it. And he's come out and he's put UFC champion in his bio. He's created a film. He's come out and said, this is going to be the easiest fight of my career. I'm going to knock him out. He's got no power. He's got nothing for me. It all links back to one man, Conor McGregor. And we go and look at what he done in that fight. Knocked out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds in one of the most impressive title performances you've ever seen. This isn't very far behind it. Of course, it's not the same. You're never going to be able to recreate that moment.
No.
But if we just zoom out a little bit and look at what's happening on a more surface level, this man really is on that Conor McGregor trajectory. And the reason I say that is because what did Conor also have? He had an entire nation behind him. He had a whole country of Ireland that could attach themselves to him. Was he the first Irish fighter? No. Was he the first Irish superstar? Yes. And that's the exact same thing for Ilia Topuria, because
he's got two countries behind him.
Not only has he got two countries, but the stars that he has behind him in Spain, the likes of Sergio Ramos, the likes of Rafael Nadal, the biggest superstars in the world bar none. If there are any Americans listening, they won't have a Scooby because they think Tom Brady's the most famous man in the world. So they won't even have a clue who Sergio Ramos is.
Yeah.
But now, we go back to the Conor McGregor. I'm talking football stadiums, baby, on the mic. What's Ilia Topuria doing? He's calling for the burnabout. And Dana's saying in the post-fight press conference,
I'm absolutely there.
Is there a roof? Yeah. How many seats does it hold? 80,000 or 35? I'm solely down for it, Dana says. So now we're looking at the Bernabeu in Spain with Ilia Topuria, who has the looks, he's got the style, he's got the undefeated
It's actually not
record.
fair, isn't it? It really isn't fair. He's got
I'm
everything, man.
holding on to the fact that I would tower over him in real life. That's all I've
Yeah,
got
you've
left.
got that. I got nothing.
You don't even have
Actually, to be fair, I am taller than him. I am taller than him. So I'm taking it.
Aside
No,
from
you're
that, I've
right.
got
It is annoying, isn't it?
absolutely nothing. But my point is,
And that's okay because he could kick our
it has
asses. That's
every
fine.
angle of marketing you could possibly dream for. So no, he's not Conor McGregor, because guess what? No one's Conor McGregor. But is he this generation's Conor McGregor? You flipping bet he is. A whole country behind him, undefeated record, the looks, the glitz, the glam, and the style, and he's just knocked out the pound for pound. This man, overnight, or slowly progressed, is a superstar. And we really have a very exciting sort of megastar on our hands.
I think I'll just cast your mind back to the 2 weeks ago, the episode we did 2 weeks ago, and we were debating the main event for 300, which we will get into. But you said over a fight like McGregor versus Michael Chandler, Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis would be culturally a more important matchup due to their nationalities and the expansion into different continents and growing the sport. I think Topuria represents that in a way, exploding into the EU market even more than it already has. For
100%.
Spain, which isn't really known for its MMA fan base as much as, countries like England and now France.
Not at all.
And this is a huge opportunity for Spain to grow. And I don't know if you saw this, but Errol Hawani reported yesterday that I believe last month, Hunter Campbell flew out personally to Spain to cut Topuria a new deal, which is far from the norm, but it does show how much they value a guy like Ilya. And they put their money where their mouth is, I'm sure. And they bet high on him, and it's paid off because now he's the featherweight champion of the world at 27, which is just younger than I'd say most champions tend to be when they get the strap. So
definitely.
Added with the fact his mileage and his damage taken in his career is so much less than a lot of other guys, not just in the division, but the roster, pretty much non-existent. 15-0, very little damage taken. It all points to a very long reign ahead, if you ask me. So I'm looking forward to it.
The thing I'll say on that as well, that you touched upon, which it just made me think as you were talking, is yes, it opens up an entire market with Spain. Yes, it opens up a large part of Europe. And yes, it coincides with Georgia as well, which we'll come on to speaking about their other superstar in just a second. But what we have to remember is it's a Spanish-speaking country. So for South America, it's absolutely massive. So not only does it open up Europe, it completely opens up South America as well, where we have so many Spanish-speaking countries that are continuously growing in mixed martial arts, and where the UFC are constantly looking to expand. So you are right. All roads do point to Rome, or in this case, Seville. However, that leads me on to my next, to Madrid.
Seville?
I don't know where I didn't actually know where he's from.
Stay on, mate. Madrid, mate.
Madrid.
Oh, right. I thought you were about the Bernabeu.
No,
I don't know, to be fair. Yeah, the Bernabeu's in Madrid.
The one thing that I'd be remiss if we didn't speak about this before we moved on is, where do we go from here? Because
that's
on
actually
paper,
what I was gonna say.
We 100% owe Volkanovski the courtesy. We owe him the courtesy of a rematch. A company man, longest reign, all of these different things. We owe him the rematch. But what do you want to see? Weigh me up your argument.
I'd want to see him hang up the gloves.
Oof.
But I said before, it's. I know you might call that early, but we all know how this game goes, mate. We all know how it goes. I don't want to see him go down that rough slide. But I talked about this in one of my videos the other week and on stream. When you have a guy who's crying in the post-fight press conference on his last fight, saying how he's struggling without fighting, for me, that just is all points to the fact that he's not leaving until he's pretty much forced to. And I wish that wasn't the case, but I think we're going to be in for a rough time with Volkanovski. And I said when just after UFC 290 when we did the episode, then I said appreciate him while he's here because it's not going to be long before he's past his prime and he's fallen off. And it's taken, when was 290? Not even that long ago, less than a year, right? And now he's just coming off. Is it three losses in his last five or four or something like that? Yeah, it's rough, isn't it? That's the fight game, and I don't really want to see him go on a skid any further. But I fear that's what's going to happen, especially if they do the rematch. I think Topuria would beat him pretty convincingly. So I don't particularly want to see that, but we do owe him at least the option. And I think in an ideal world, I don't think he'd take it, but he probably will.
I think it's definitely easy for us as fans, and especially as Volk fans, to say, don't want to see that anymore. We need to hang him up. And I've seen that narrative somewhat painted online, but we have to remember this is the man's livelihood. This is how this man puts bread on his table. And let's not forget, he just put pen to paper to the biggest deal he's ever had in his entire life. So there's no way that's happening. Whether we like it or not, there's no way that's happening. Do I believe that he should take, like Teddy Atlas said to Manny Pacquiao back in the day, even when it was tricky because he was later on in his career and a year's a very long time off, I think he needs a year off. I think he needs to let his body heal, his mind heal, have a breather, spend some time with his new child, get the love back for the game. Not that it dissipated at all, but it's just been camp after camp after camp after camp. And yes, it is a good point that you raised about when he got emotional in the press conference before, but we have to remember as well, I'm not saying that he didn't have those emotions, but what we have to remember is the man was suffering from a concussion, which we found out, and a resulting factor to having a concussion is a fluctuation in emotions. So we have to bear that in mind. So I'm not saying he didn't feel like that, but I'm just saying, would it have been quite as emotive as that, and would it have been quite as pungent as that? Possibly not. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying to maybe the extent.
It's an interesting point, actually. Never thought about that.
Yeah. I like to give a full spectrum of viewpoints. It's true, though. It's true. Concussion comes with a fluctuation of emotions, and he spoke about that as well, about how that played a role in how he came across there. But not that he regrets it, but just to bear that in mind. So I think he should take a year off. I think he's owed the courtesy of a featherweight rematch. However, I honestly think he should take a year off. This is, in my opinion, what I would like to see. I think he should take a year off, and he should just see where the divisions are at. Because he is in a position where he could walk back into a title shot at featherweight, and it's not off the cards he could walk back into a title shot at lightweight. I know it sounds ridiculous at the moment because he's lost twice when he's gone up there, and my point is, this game is very fickle, it's very random, and they always need main events. And it's all about time in this game. It's all about timing. And I'm not saying that on merit he should just go up and walk straight into a title shot. I'm saying it is a possibility. But other than that, have a look what the general landscape at lightweight looks like, because there may be a Charles Oliveira fight in Brazil. There may be a Conor McGregor fight in Ireland. Who the hell knows? We literally have no idea in 12 months from now. So I would like him just to sit it out and be able to, yes, he can walk straight back at featherweight if he wants. He deserves that. And also just to assess his options. Because, yes, he'll need one big profile win at lightweight for sure. But this game's a crazy one, is my point. This game is a very flipping crazy one.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It could happen. You never know.
I think that leads us on to a good point about saying this game is a crazy one. Because something that wasn't crazy to predict was how this fight was going. Honestly, people kept asking me how Rob Whittaker, Paulo Costa was going to go. And I said the same thing, and I'll say it again now. There are sometimes fights when it's just too easy to predict. It's just too easy to predict what is going to look like. Who's going to win? I thought Bobby Knuckles by decision. But what it's going to look like, an all-out classic that you'll probably flick on when someone doesn't know what MMA is and you say, watch this fight and enjoy it. Shut up, sit down, watch this, enjoy it. And guess what? It's exactly what we got. Let me know what you thought about this one.
I don't think I'd go that hyperbolic with it, to be honest. I thought it was a good fight. I thought it was a fun fight. I'm not sitting here saying,
That's
watch
what
this.
I thought.
This is the
That's
one
what I
fight
thought
to pick.
before the fight, and then after it,
Oh,
I
right,
didn't think,
right.
oh, I was wrong. That's my point in that.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was easy to predict in regards to this is going to be bell to bell, slug them out, drag them out, war. And at the end of it, when I watched that, I didn't think, oh, I was a million miles off the pace. That is sort of where I was going.
Fair point. It was
more
a fun
so
fight.
than it was an all-time classic.
Yeah. It was a fun fight, and I'm not surprised. I picked Whittaker by decision. That was my full backing early on. And something that I really picked up on was when he got rocked at the end of that first round, with a credit to Paulo Costa with a beautiful, I don't know the exact name of the technique, but it was a spinning kick of sorts.
Spinning hook kick.
Yeah, spinning hook kick. And it was a beautiful shot. But it was Whittaker's ability to rally back, which we haven't seen from him in a while. I think the last time we really seen that level of resilience in the face of adversity was against Yoel Romero. He got dropped in that fight, was able to rally back and win, I believe, in the second one. And when Adesanya dropped him in the first round when they had their title fight, he wasn't really able to come back. And most fighters can't. It's a tough thing to do, but it's what champions are made of. And he failed that against Dricus as well. But here against Paulo Costa, granted, you could argue he was saved by the bell, but he recovered in that minute time frame. And he took advantage, and he came back, and he looked weirdly, the second round is his best. I thought he looked brilliant in the second round. Took that dominantly and grew into the third round and took it probably the second half of it to win it pretty convincingly as well. I had it 29-28, maybe 30-27 as well. I wasn't mad about it. I saw people getting angry that one of the judges scored it 30-27, but I was like, he won most of that round up until he ran all up until the last 10 seconds. And then Costa, to his credit, landed a big shot. So you can score that round either way. It wouldn't have mattered really because I think Whittaker went 1, 2, and 3 pretty convincingly. But it was a good performance. I just wish we saw more of the high kick. I mentioned earlier that Bisping was picking up on it, and I was screaming at my screen for him to just throw the high kick because it was there for him. He threw it once in that entire fight, and he'd set it up beautifully with the accumulation of calf kicks, which clearly were bothering Costa. I just wish he threw the high kick more. That was probably my only criticism as a armchair analyst that I could give. But it was a good performance, and if we're looking ahead in the title picture for that middleweight division, obviously you've got the narrative of Dricus du Plessis for the rematch, and then potentially for a trilogy if it does go the way of Whittaker, which is an option I'd like to see. For me, that's the only option in that division. I don't really know who else you throw him against. Chimaev, why not run it? One of those two.
When I said I knew what I was going to get with this fight, that goes to the credit and the detriment of more so Paulo Costa, but also Robert Whittaker. I think you touched upon it perfectly. Seeing Rob rally like that not only spoke to his conditioning, which is a good point to mention, but also spoke to the tenacity of him in that fight was so evident. There was just an added energy. And I was sitting there thinking about it, to be honest. When he was walking in the cage, I was just putting myself in his position as best as I could. And I thought, I've come into this organisation at 21. I fought the best of the best. I've become champ. I've been in fight of the years. I've had untold bonuses. And it just becomes another fight. Every fight becomes another fight. So yes, Dricus is good. Yes, he was skilled. Yes, he was preparing for him. Yes, he would have trained hard. But there isn't this extra spark, this extra fire in the belly because it becomes your job. You've been in the game 12. You've been in the industry 12 years, the UFC for 12 years, and you're only 33. So I can only imagine that there becomes a time when you have some fights where you're almost just going through the motions. Oh, okay, I know how to cut weight. Okay, I know what training camp looks like to win. Okay, I know how to get in shape. This is my road work, all these things. And you just get into the flow of it. So seeing Bobby Knuckles with this added oomph, this added energy, this added venom was fun to see, because when that man comes out and he's got that bit between his teeth, he really honestly always is one of the best to watch. The thing with Paulo Costa, you know what you're going to get from him. You know exactly what you're going to get from him. Always entertaining, always game, ridiculous conditioning, great chin. And he had 2
I don't
camps
know
on
about
the...
that one, actually. Sorry,
What,
just going to have
great
to jump
chin?
in. No. Conditioning. That I disagree with. I think that's probably his biggest weakness is his cardio, if you ask me. Let's be honest, he was good for 2 rounds in that fight.
Look at the
Slowed down
pace
massively.
they were fighting at.
Yeah, it was a high pace, to be fair.
Bobby Knuckles slowed down in the second. He just recovered well in the third and came back very, very well. I don't know if it was as much his conditioning as it was the fact that his front leg got absolutely obliterated and he couldn't really move on it. So when he was slowing down, I don't think it was his gas tank, because we've seen him go a hard 5 many times, or a hard 3 and a hard 5 many times. I think it was more so the fact that he couldn't really walk, because he had no front leg, which was all credit to Bobby Knuckles, by the way. I'm taking nothing away from him. I'm just saying, if we go back and watch the Vettori fights, we go back and watch the Romero fights, even when he gets tired, he pushes through it. So I'm not saying he has the best conditioning in the middleweight division, but when you factor in how heavily muscled he is and the pace that he can fight at, I would say he's got pretty good conditioning. And conditioning comes back to how well you can take a shot. And that man can eat a shot. So I would say he's got pretty good
conditioning. He's got a chin on him, doesn't he?
Yeah,
underrated chin.
But that comes down to conditioning, though, because if you're not in shape,
cardio,
you don't eat those in the third. You just don't. You just don't. But anyway, my point was he had 2 camps on the spin, which he hadn't fought, so no damage taken, but he obviously would have been shot. My only criticism, again, armchair analyst to the absolute max, but this is very, very true.
Mate, it's fine.
I'm in my armchair.
We're allowed.
Why do you think I'm
We're allowed.
You know, what else have I
good point.
this for?
Good point.
My only criticism of Paulo Costa is I knew before that fight happened that yes, he was going to be sharp. Yes, he was going to be all of these things. And he was all of that. But we haven't ever seen an evolution in his game. We haven't. We haven't ever seen him use feints or fakes. We haven't ever seen him at least utilize some offensive wrestling to give different looks, even if he's just showing the option. We haven't seen him narrow up that stance so his front leg doesn't get chewed up. And in turn, yes, we've had some incredible fights, but he finds himself as this plateau where he struggles to break through because the guys that are just that layer above, they do blend the styles a little bit better. They do adapt within the fight a little bit better. They do make adjustments a little bit better. So for as good as he is, he sort of gets caught in this stagnant period, which is a seriously high level. But when you're talking the Israel Adesanyas and the Robert Whittakers, it's always going to be hard to break through if you're very rudimentary. Okay, we've got Paulo Costa. Very tough, hits very hard, kicks very hard, but he's just going to kickbox us. We know what we're going to get.
Just playing in one dimension less, I think, is than everyone else.
You just had a kickboxing match. And Rob didn't even show a takedown, in all fairness. He didn't even show a takedown.
Right at the end.
Right at the end. But that's just my thing with Paulo Costa, is you know how to prepare for him. You know how to prepare for him. So I think, what do we do with Robert Whittaker? I think we give him Hamzat Chimaev. I don't think you can give him Izzy, and I don't think you can give him Dricker straight away. I think he's maybe one away, because he's had a few title shots, let's not forget. I think he needs one more.
You say that. He's had one since losing the belt, right?
He had 2 against Izzy.
Yeah, well, but the first one was a defense.
Yeah, well, yeah. It was an interim champ, right? And Izzy was a champ, or which way was that?
No. Izzy was the interim champ. Rob was undisputed.
Right,
Rob was defending his belt.
It was in reverse, right? So let's say he's had a title fight that he's lost against Izzy. And then he lost the rematch, Lost the rematch in the title fight against Izzy. And then he lost the number 1 contendership in pretty emphatic fashion.
But keep in mind, how many people did he beat in that run-up? I'd argue you could give him
100%. But this is a second.
Definitely could.
This is a second stint. I just watched him face the champ, and as good as he looked just then, and as much as I love him, he just got dominated in 2 rounds by the champ in a 3-round fight. So I'm not really looking to see that straight away. Not really. Not when we have bigger fights on the horizon.
Yeah.
And I don't really think Izzy deserves that more, to be perfectly honest. I actually don't.
No, I agree.
Whittaker
deserves it more than Adesanya does. I'd say. I don't think that's a crazy take. That's all. I think that's a pretty.
No, that's fair. Well, he's got a more recent win.
Most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a more recent win.
So I'd be happy with either of those options. I think Hamzat Chimaev's a great fight, but I think let's just quickly touch on Ian Garry and Jeff Neal because they
Let's
clashed last night.
let's
And it was an interesting skirmish, is probably the term I use. It was a bit of a tactical chess match, which resulted in, let's be honest, let's not sugarcoat it. It wasn't fun to watch. It was a pretty boring fight. What I don't understand is the fan reception. Actually, I completely understand it. I mean, I expect it. I don't understand it, but I expect it. That's the way I describe it. Was the fan reception towards Gary afterwards for his performance, saying he ran away? I saw that a lot on Twitter and everything.
Did he say that?
He ran away. He shouldn't have won the fight.
You don't understand
ridiculous.
footwork.
Like, what do you want him? Yeah, like, what do you want him to do? Stand in front of Jeff Neal, plant his feet, and get knocked out? Because he's obviously not going to fight like that. Jeff Neal's one of the hardest hitters, not just in the division, but the whole sport. Gary's going to have to play that circling game. And as he said in the post fight, he's going to have to jab a lot, jab his head off. I wasn't mad at the decision. I personally have Jeff Neal winning it. I thought he won the first two and gave Gary. It was very close. I mean, you could give the rounds either way. I wasn't mad at the decision. I wasn't firm on Jeff Neal, but he's who I had at the end of the fight. I thought Gary won the third convincingly, but the first two were a bit of a toss-up. Personally, that was the third round was the only clear one. I wasn't mad at the decision. And that's why I don't understand the boos. Well, obviously, because people don't like Ian Garry for all the stupid cuck stuff or whatever, his wife. Speaking of that, actually, I'm just going to go on a tangent. The UFC are playing the game. They know exactly what they're doing by giving Ian Garry's wife her own seat in the front row and the camera panning to every 5 minutes. They know exactly what they're doing. And I can't tell if I like it or not. I think, yeah, I don't even know how to feel about that. It's a little bit below the belt. But at the same time, it's the money game. It's the entertainment game. We know how this works. So I'm not surprised by it. But I wasn't mad at Gary's performance. I don't fault him. And he's playing into that heel role a little bit. And I almost like it a little bit. You know, shushing the crowd, saying you're all here to watch me. Even if they aren't, he doesn't care. He's playing the bad guy. And Topuria did that in the build-up against Volkanovski just to sell the fight, and it worked. And I have to give Gary credit in that regard. He knows exactly how to play the game, and he represents that new modern age fighter who knows not just how to fight to a higher level, but to play the media side of things a lot better than some of those older guys can. And I don't really know where he goes from here. Obviously, he's calling out Colby Covington. Whether Colby accepts that, I don't know. But that's a matchup I'd like to see. Why not? It's a fun style matchup.
I think from start to finish, I was super impressed by Ian Garry, to be perfectly honest with you. Super, super impressed by him. I think in regards to the performance, was it the most exciting? No, definitely not. However, he's making these fights look not that difficult. I'm not saying it wasn't close.
I've got to disagree with you.
I'm not saying it wasn't close. I'm not saying it wasn't close. But at what point... Okay, answer me this question. At what point in the fight against Neil Magny was he in danger? At what point in the fight...
I agree.
At what point in the fight against Jeff Neal was he in danger?
A couple of times in the first round, I'd say he got clipped a little bit.
He got punched.
He wasn't in danger of getting knocked out, but he was in danger of losing on the scorecards.
He got punched in a fight.
I don't think he did enough to say you could dominantly give him that, and he looked in. When you say in danger of losing on decision, absolutely. I don't think he did enough.
Okay. Yes, in danger. That's not what I'm talking about. In danger of looking decision.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I'm just saying that there was no danger in that fight for him. Is my point. He showed in the fight. At no time was he in any danger against an extremely dangerous person.
Yep, that's
the reason I say that. The reason I say this is because Mike Malott, who I was very, very high on, and still am, incredible talent, surging through the rankings, right? Goes out and faces Neil Magny, absolutely pulverizing him until he isn't, and he gets finished. Okay, how did Ian Garry do? Well, Ian Garry absolutely dominated him the entire time and had him on the canvas just butt scooting for half of it. Okay, pretty impressive. Okay, but we're just going to gloss over that because Neil Magny's Neil Magny and he should beat him. Okay, now he faces Jeff Neal, one of the most dangerous, hard-hitting, incredible boxers in the welterweight division. Was it a close fight? Yeah, there were close rounds. Was he in danger at any point? No. How did Jeff Neal look against Shavkat Rakhmonov, who we're also high on, by the way?
Yeah, he finished him. Would have finished a lesser man.
Many times. Many times was Shavkat in danger. Many times. Did he get seriously tagged? Did Ian Garry get punched? Yeah, he did. He was in a fight. But did he get tagged and rocked and hurt? No, he didn't. Not at any point did that happen. Now, we can sit here and say, oh, they were closest rounds. I don't really think anyone with a sane mind thinks that that's crazy to give Ian Garry that fight. I really, really don't.
No, of course
Unless
not.
you're sort of looking at for bias. My point is, I'm not saying that was the craziest performance ever. But he's coming out against these elite welterweights with all of this attention on him, all of this scrutiny, all of these eyeballs and this hatred and these trolls and all of this backlash online. And he's going in there, smile on his face, he's calm, he's relaxed, he's composed, and he's doing his job. He's 26 years of age, and he's going and doing his job under the pressure cooker that is the UFC. And it's just tick, another win. Tick, still undefeated. Tick, another ranked opponent. Tick, top 10. It's like, well, you can't really do a lot more. You can't really
You have to
do a
give him
lot
that.
more. And he comes out on the mic afterwards, and I'm thinking, right, let's see how you lean into this here, because I'm really interested. And yeah, he sort of leaned into the heel roll. He didn't swear. He wasn't aggressive. He didn't say, F these haters, F these trolls. He said, I was a boy growing up watching this sport, and guess what? I'm the one in here now living out my dream, and you all get to watch me. And I thought, yeah, you are right. You are very right. At all this point, all that you are haters in a dream world that he's living. Whatever we think of it, he has a happy family. He lives in Brazil, loves his team, loves his training, and he's still undefeated in his dream job. Doing pretty flipping well for himself. Even though I don't necessarily agree with everything that he's come out, I didn't like the Neil Magny stuff. I didn't even like it when Ariel. I didn't care about that. It was more so the kid thing and the.
You didn't. I mean,
Mugshot sold the fight.
No. The kid stuff though. I mean, it was.
I didn't like that. I didn't like.
I mean, he wasn't. I wouldn't say he was wrong, but yeah, it was a bit wrong to.
I didn't. Let me say what I didn't like about that. I didn't like that he went on Ariel. And Ariel said, "You've seen the implications that words can have on your family and things like that." And do you have sort of any remorse for the stuff you said about Neil Magny? Bearing in mind, Neil Magny since then has come out and said, no hate for the kid. No. He was like, nah, mean every word. I didn't like that. That was the only thing that I just didn't really like. That was it for me. I just didn't really like that. I thought that was a little bit immature. But like I said, still young, as are we. Still very, very young. So you're obviously going to make mistakes.
Nah, he's 26.
It's ridiculous. That is young. In a world when
he's young
millions...
as a fighter. I mean, you're a grown man. I feel like I don't know. It's a tricky one.
No. You've grown up in a sport of fighting when you're in the public eye, and your whole life has been a professional sportsman. It's a completely different entity where you have all of this pressure cooker and all these eyes on you to scrutinize every decision. So you cannot be infallible. You cannot be. So. The one thing that I will say, all of that, super impressed. All of that. Not the most exciting fight. All of that. I'm not here to comment on his situation with his... Honestly, he's listening to the whole situation with his Mrs. X-Fella and whatnot. I think that we just all kind of hate the fact that it sounds a lot more mature than what most of us could ever do. When you listen to him speak about it and how doesn't want to come between the relationship of the kid and the dad.
Exactly.
And their
that was always the truth, though, but people blew it out of proproportion of something that it wasn't.
Of course it was.
We talked about that. Yeah, we know that.
The one thing, though, I've got to say.
No.
And I do mean this. I do mean this. And I'm not some weird conspiracy theorist. I'm not some... This is an area I actually have professional qualifications in. It is not looking fantastic in the world of sport to be on a strictly vegan diet if not necessary. And he does look noticeably softer. He does. I saw a video of him at Cage Warriors. Someone literally posted it and said, look how much muscle mass he's lost. And I was like, I don't really pay too much attention to these things, but I just had a look at the video. I thought, wow, he really does look a lot softer. It's hard to get complete proteins. It's hard to get the amount of protein you need and complete protein sources, because all of the proteins in vegan products don't have all the branched chain amino acids. So yes, it can be supplemented. Yes, it can do all these things. Yeah. But it's very hard to get the multivitamins and the complete side tangent. Let's not get away with that. I mean it though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll just quickly finish off. When I was just wanted to clarify the Jeff Neal thing, the one thing I didn't like about his mugshot thing was the fact he sold shirts as much. I think that was below the belt. Doing it, I think it's fair game. You know, you're playing the trash game, but selling it as merch, I think that's a bit naff.
What? So
But
he can make them, but he can't sell them.
it's just a bit. Well, you're profiting off it. It's just like it's a
Yeah.
bit. I don't know. Not a fan of it personally, but
I wouldn't do
doesn't
it.
matter.
But I actually thought that was pretty good. He said,
I'm surprised. You're the one with the clothing. You're the one with the clothing line. I thought you'd be all over it, man.
He said, how many people were talking about this fight before that happened? No one. He said, how many people knew about this after it happened? A lot of people. He was bang on the money. He was bang on the money. So yes, it probably isn't everyone's cup of tea, but he was very right. He was very right.
Yeah.
And he got everyone watching. So
yeah, there's just a couple of things I think we should just brush through. I mean, obviously, Cejudo retiring. I don't think there's much to say too much on that. I think it's a fight that went the way we expected it. I only say that because we've been going for quite a while, and some other stuff I want to jump into besides the fights. But I mean, obviously, I'm sure you agree. Merab was very impressive, especially after he got clipped pretty hard in the first round. Rallied back with a beautiful performance, showboating, becoming a fan favorite. I'd actually argue, which is a crazy turn of events. Really won the crowd over the last few months. Becoming I wouldn't say he's become a charismatic guy. I'd say he always was.
True.
I think he's really flexing it now a little bit and playing into that role, and I think it's worked really well for him. So credit to him there. But I think obviously Kopilov lost to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Brilliant performance from him. But I touched on earlier. Oh, you got something to say, or do you want to?
I've just been banging that drum for a very long time, so I felt very smart because I'd been in so many live streams recently when people would ask me about that fight, and I just kept saying, Anthony Hernandez is the dark horse of 185. I couldn't keep saying that enough. He just blends the martial arts together so well, and on top of that, his conditioning just melts everyone. So it's really and he got caught in some hot water at some points, but he does what he does. He laughs it off, he walks forward, and we need to bear in mind, right? Not only was Kopilov on a 4-fight knockout streak, he had successfully defended 20 straight takedown attempts. He'd never been taken down at that point. And he hadn't been taken down, and then guess what? The pressure started building, and then one got through, then two got through, and then he was on his back. I picked third round submission, so I was a little bit off, but I was pretty on the money with that, so... I need to touch upon Merab's performance. I can't gloss over that.
Yeah, go on. I'll let you have your piece.
It was too impressive. Henry actually looked better than I thought he was going to look in regards to the man's 37 years of age.
It was. Yeah, it's
37 years of age.
Catching up to him, as you say. Yeah.
You cannot. It doesn't matter who you are up here. It doesn't matter what you've accomplished. At 37 years of age, you cannot compete in the 135-pound division at the top for sustained periods of time. I'm not saying you can't win. I'm saying you can't sustain that for a long period of time. Now, there are some anomalies probably along the way, but Cejudo, I actually thought done pretty well. I felt like he may have thrown the game plan out the window a little bit at one point because he looked like, right, okay, we're fighting. And they just started actually just sort of standing in the pocket and trading, which was pretty fun. But seeing Merab pick Henry Cejudo up, I need to touch upon this. It was pretty incredible, wasn't it? He picks up...
Picking up an Olympic gold medalist.
Credentialed Olympian in wrestling we've ever seen in the UFC. Someone that prides himself on that as his complete identity. Let's be perfectly honest. He literally is called Triple C. That is his identity. That is his persona. That is everything to him. And we're watching a man pick him up on his shoulder and talking to Mark Zuckerberg as he slams him on the floor.
Shades of Shemaev, I might say, against the Leech.
Exactly what I thought yesterday.
Yeah, was a legit performance. And I think that makes him undeniable as the next in line. Dana's already confirmed it. Justice, I think, served.
10 fights,
the number 1 contender.
10 fights in a row. 3 champions. Yeah. Bruh. 1 double champ.
Him already. I mean, realistically, how do you think... Yeah. How do you think that goes, realistically, though? I think he dominates Vera. I don't think that's even that's close, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I don't think that's even... Vera absolutely
I think Sean O'Malley's tricky. I think Sean O'Malley's very tricky for him.
I agree with that.
I think Sean
I
O'Malley's
think he
very
wins,
tricky
but
for
I think
him.
it's a tough one. You have to plan. You have to plan accordingly.
Where I knew that Henry would have success, and I always favoured Merab, but I didn't count out Cejudo indefinitely because Cejudo has great timing when people are entering the pocket and he picks up patterns. And Merab, that his corner picked up very well, actually, may I add, in the round. Ray Longo said to him in the corner, and he was very right in saying so, when he was exiting the pocket, his hands were down, and he was a bit defensively liable. And I believe that if Cejudo was going to have any success, it wasn't going to be in wrestling, it wasn't going to be in anything like that. It was going to be in those exchanges in the pocket there, where he just caught him in between transitions, and Merab was a little bit defensively, a little bit off the
That
gas
left
for
hook
a little
outside
bit.
the clinch, off the exit of the clinch, he landed multiple times.
And that's what done him, right? And I'm just thinking, and I thought this before, and I think it even more so now. Seriously intriguing matchup if it is Sean O'Malley. But if there's someone that you cannot do that against, is Sean O'Malley. Because he will find you. He will find you, and he will put numbers behind that as well. It won't just be one. It'll be 1, 2, 3. And we've seen it against Moraes get in trouble. We've seen him against Henry get in trouble. And Sean O'Malley has different skills to those guys. And also, the last thing I'll say on that is it's very hard to find O'Malley because he moves so much in both stances in a big cage. Very, very hard to see him planted. So it's going to be very hard to even find that single leg. And he does. There aren't, just to get into a tiny detail of it, his single leg defense, Sean O'Malley's, is seriously good. If you go back and watch the fight against Aljamain Sterling,
that
the
first
way
round.
that so impressive. I think I can't even remember the exchange initially, but he was on a single and he sort of limp legged out of there, and it was super high level stuff. He's very, very good on a single. I hear Tim Welch talk about it very often. So yeah, that's a very good fight. But sorry, had to touch on that one.
Passion takes over. No, I get it. I obviously we can blast through the UFC 300 announcement. Of course, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Not really what I'm looking for. I'm going to be honest. That does not scream UFC 300 main event. I don't think it's one any of us could have predicted. You know what? The reason I never could have predicted that is because I forgot Jamal Hill was even in the bloody picture.
Yeah.
And that tells you how little I really care about that matchup. And I'm sure it'll be a fun fight. And we've actually briefly touched on it before. And I think we were both in agreement that Jamal Hill actually wins, which is a bit of against the grain. But I think we were both in agreement from off the top of my head. You know, what do you say to that? Do you know what I mean? It's realistically for me, the Max Holloway Gaethje should be main event. I think, you know, irrespective of the title order and making the title fights the main event, whatever. You know, it's an okay fight. The whole card itself is really good, and I'm not going to deny that. And it's, of course, one I'm looking forward to, and it's an historic event. But when you have to put the word historic behind an event like 300. To me, it doesn't scream Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill.
What does,
main
though?
event.
That's available.
Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler. We've done this. We did this. That is historic. When you pack that in with everything else, that or Adesanya, Dricus du Plessis, as you said.
The
One of those
UFC
two
are not making Conor McGregor fight before they renew their TV deal and they use his contract as maximum leverage. And Dana can come out in the press conference and say, Conor McGregor's rich. That's all he says. That is all he says to the question. Why is Conor not fighting? Conor McGregor's rich. No. You're not actually telling us. Why is he not fighting? Well, Conor McGregor's rich. No. That's not telling us. Okay, Conor McGregor broke his leg. Yeah, that was a few years ago now, and he's recovered and he's training and he said he wants to fight. Conor McGregor's rich. No, tell us the reason. It is because they are leveraging Conor McGregor's name for the new TV rights that they have not sold yet. That's the answer. There is no other answer. There is no other answer. So that is the conclusion of that. They offered Leon Edwards 3 fights. This is more so my question. They offered him 3 fights.
I saw that.
That would have been Shavkat Rakhmonov. That would have been Shavkat Rakhmonov injured, so couldn't have fought. Chimaev.
Ramadan.
Less Ramadan, more so he can't actually fight in America.
Why is that, by the way?
Visa issues. He must have. It usually means they have a criminal record, but I didn't know he had a criminal record, so he probably does. He must do, because that's usually when it says visa issues. Bisping always says this. It always means criminal record. That's always what it means. That's why people can't obtain. No,
know that.
Because you can't go to America with a criminal record, right? So it's very hard to get work permits, especially if you have a criminal record. So when people say, "Oh, there's visa issues," no, there are not visa issues. They have a criminal record, and it's hard for them to actually obtain a work visa. So I didn't know Chimaev had a criminal record, and he potentially doesn't. But it is factual that it is visa issues. So why it is visa issues, I am not sure. But they couldn't make that fight. But the third one must be Bilal. It must be.
Yeah.
So why they didn't make that fight, I'm not sure. Because they said that they tried to. It's not a case of it not being big enough. They said they tried 3 opponents. That would be Chimaev, that would be Rukmanov, and it has to be Bilal. But Bilal said...
There's no way Bilal wouldn't take it.
This is my point.
Neither would Leon. Well,
So
Leon said they said he accepted it, didn't they?
So have they just sidestepped Bilal? And if so, who would it have been?
Didn't they? I mean, I know they mentioned Makhachev, right? That was in conversation.
Possibly.
Right?
Possibly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good shout. Good shout.
But then again, Ramadan was also. I don't even know.
But they would have asked.
But they were desperate. They would have asked him. Yeah,
they would have asked.
They were desperate.
Because Ramadan doesn't mean they cannot fight. It just means that they usually won't. For example, Bilal Muhammad was down. He was down. So much so that when he was in the camera, when he was on the camera in the crowd, on the crowd cam, he was going like this. And I was thinking, they're going to announce it. They're going to announce it. He's going to be on 300. I've been predicting that for a long time. They must have sidestepped him.
It's the most Bilal thing. Just imagine if they told him you're on it, mate. And he's in the crowd putting 300 up and they just completely lied to him and just said, yeah, we're doing Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill. That would be funny. That would be the most Bilal thing to ever happen.
I can't believe that the UFC have just sidestepped him. And they said, you know what? I can't.
I can. Of course they can. Why wouldn't they do it?
Let alone for UFC 300.
You're not putting Bilal Muhammad.
One option,
you're not putting Bilal Muhammad on a 300 main event.
One option, sure.
You're not. 2
option, okay, I get it. Shavkat, fancy name. Chimaev, fancy name. 3 options. No, I can't believe that. For the man that's on a 9-fight winning streak or whatever, no, I can't believe that. That's outrageous. Outrageous.
I said it earlier, it's the money game. We know that. They're going to do anything in their power not to give him that.
This is what I don't get.
He doesn't sell. Yeah, he brings in eyeballs. He doesn't sell pay-per-views though, and that's the difference. He's not selling pay-per-views.
What religion is he?
Mate, who's paying to watch Bilal Muhammad fight on a main event? No one. Let's not get it twisted here. Don't lie to yourself.
I don't believe it.
Thank God we get it on subscription because you sure as hell know. You don't lie to yourself. You are not paying a $70 pay-per-view to watch Bilal Muhammad headline. It's just not how it is. And I like Bilal, but you're not paying for him.
Okay.
You're not.
Well, let's spin the conversation to you're not watching Bilal Muhammad headline. You're watching Leon Rocky Edwards headline.
And I love Leon, but you're not paying to watch him either.
Why not? What, the pound for pound best fighter in the world?
Personally.
I'm not saying it from bias.
Hang on a minute. Where's that come from? You just dropped pound for pound best fighter in the world.
If you KO the number 1, you're number 1 in my opinion.
What? You're not saying Makhachev's pound for pound? Are we?
No.
That's a bit of a bold claim. I'm not far off disagreeing with you. I do think ability-wise, I think he is the best.
Why?
But statistically, I think Makhachev's done more. No, I think most people would disagree with you.
How?
Well, he beat the pound for pound.
That's a
lie. He beat Volkanovski.
That's a lie.
What are you talking about?
The argument is Volkanovski and Charles Oliveira. That's the argument. Is Charles Oliveira and Volkanovski.
Absolutely the argument.
But listen, we can go back and forth on this all day, and I don't actually stand that strong on this, to be perfectly honest. But I'm just providing the counter argument to that. No,
of course.
I'm not here saying, oh, Volk's just 145er. But Islam didn't go up and beat the pound for pound twice. He had someone come up to his division and beat them twice. So yes, he beat Volk and Charles Oliveira, who were 1 and 3 even at the time, which is incredible. But in my opinion, that isn't much different to beating than isn't KOing stiff the actual pound for pound number 1 at the time, and then beating him twice.
I disagree. Personally, I think it's more impressive. Different. And I'm a huge Leon fan. I'm on like. I mean, you were just as much as me defending that guy in the trenches before he was the champ, and I still say Makhachev is ahead of it, pips him in that.
But it means skill sets, right? It means skill for skill.
Skill for skill, I agree, but legacy and records, no. Makhachev's pound for pound number 1, and that's why I'd like that fight. That would be a perfect 300 main event.
Leon's never been knocked out in the UFC.
Yeah. I don't think that accolades wise that puts him higher.
But you said legacy and
Legacy,
resumes
yeah.
and resumes. All right, let's talk
Makhav's been
resumes.
knocked
The
out
man
once,
hasn't
sure.
lost in the UFC apart from Kamaru Usman in a close decision, and then he avenged it twice with a
I don't
KO
think
loss.
that's true. Actually, I think he's lost
Yes,
twice.
it is true. No, that isn't true. He's lost once in UFC.
No. I'm putting. I'll bet you right now a tenner.
Google
Leon's
it.
lost more than once in the UFC.
I'm nervous,
Put your money where they are. Say it with chest.
All right,
Say it with chest.
fine. I'll bet you a tenner. Fine. Google it. I'm pretty sure he's only lost once. 100%.
I'm happy to it. Okay.
100%.
Live on air. Let this be known. Hang on a minute. See, you're quaking right now. I better be right.
No, I'm not. It's a tenner. So
yeah,
it's not.
I can confirm he lost to Claudio Silva in his debut. So, nah, that's right. You keep the tenner. That's all right.
And what? No, I'll pay you that tenner. What was that decision?
No. Yeah, he lost by decision. Claudio Silva in his debut.
Still hasn't been knocked out.
Sam's, when you make videos, mate, you got the research. That's when you make these Leon. I remember when I did my Leon documentary. I know the game.
Head, that was just his first professional loss.
No, I mean, well, he hasn't lost since that Usman loss. So he lost that to Usman.
It's irrelevant.
And then he hasn't lost since.
Coming back to the actual full circle to the fight. Full circle to the fight. I don't know why I tried to die on that hill. I didn't strongly believe in it. I was there to have that. I was there to have that argument.
You were set. You were ready to.
I was there to have that argument. Fall on
your sword.
But what I will say is, you said about UFC 300. There's one thing that we know about the UFC, right? Is they love to headline cards with heavies. They just do. They as much as I don't really care about that whatsoever. They just see the heavier, the bigger name. It doesn't really make any sense in the world, but that's what they've always believed in. But what is true is Alex Pereira is one of the few legitimate superstars in the sport at the moment. Double champion, all the pedigree in the world in regards to glory, all the fan base, literally all of the fan base. There isn't a person out there that doesn't like Alex Pereira. He's got his whole gimmick. He's got the whole build-up. He's got the whole aura. He has, honestly, everything. So he's a very easy person to market as UFC 300 for certain, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah.
I think it's just Jamal Hill as the adversary. It just doesn't... And I like Jamal Hill, but it doesn't scream... it doesn't scream
He's a bit salty,
historical.
though, isn't he?
He's just there. Do you know what I mean?
He's good, though.
He is good, and I think he beats him.
Yeah,
we agree. We think he beats him, but
I do think
he's just Jamal Hill with an awful. I just shrug my shoulders. I don't care about Jamal Hill that much. Let alone for a 300 main event. I don't know. Exactly. Why? I don't even know. I don't even know why I don't like him. That's how uninteresting he is to me. There's not even a reason I'm disliking him. It's just
I enjoy him as a fighter, to be honest.
As a fighter, he's fun, sure, but I wouldn't say he's more fun than some of the other guys.
And in all honesty, people are acting like this matters. It doesn't matter.
Who cares?
It actually doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter. We're going to look back on this in 10 years and go, oh, who's the headliner? Oh, it was Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill. Oh, who was the co-main? Oh, it was Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. Oh, who else was on the card? We're just going to be shouting out huge names. So it's...
Yeah.
We've got the bantamweight goal on the main card as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's up, mate. It's a fun card. I hate all this discourse about the whole card being crap. All these YouTubers just click, view farming saying UFC 300 sucks. Oh, we got bloody Zhang Wei Li co-maining. This is terrible. The card is stacked. You got Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje is the third fight of the main card. That kind of tells you everything. I think it's great from top to bottom. I think it's fun. It's a good card. And obviously also, the main event could be better, as I said, but we're going in circles.
Let me actually just shut this out there before we sort of wrap. But unless there was obviously anything else you wanted to touch on, but what would you rather? I was going to ask it as a rhetorical, but I'll ask it as an actual question because maybe you would rather the opposing side. Would you rather have a stupid UFC 300 where in 5 years we look back and go, oh, remember this UFC 300 card with XYZ name? Or would you actually rather a stupid UFC 299, 300 and 301? Because that's what we're getting at the moment, really, or at least we're getting 299
I'd rather
and
the
300.
300. People still talk about UFC
Would
100
you
to this day.
really?
It's iconic. UFC 100 remains iconic
But
now.
the names don't do anything for the card, really. That's a stupid statement. To a certain degree.
That is a very bold statement.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
Having bigger names on that card doesn't make that a better card.
You say the antithesis of instead having a run of cards which are stacked from top to bottom. So a good example of that is the sort of run from sort of early last year that we had. Can you? And I'm just going to ask you this just to prove the point. Can you name?
I can't remember last week.
The headliners. Yeah, that's my point. So I'd rather have a card that I can actually remember off the top of my head that remains historical. Like, I remember obviously 285 was Jones Garn.
Why
and
is it
284
that
was Volkanovski. I don't know. It's just it sticks in your memory. You want a card that you're going to remember. And for one as iconic as UFC 300, man. This is historical, as I said, and it needs to have a historical main event. That's why I'm not a huge fan of it. As objectively, the fight on its own is actually a good fight. I'd like that on any other card, but I think when it's 300, it's a different ball game.
Let's ignore the matchups.
Leaves a lasting legacy.
Let's ignore the matchups, right? Let me paint this to you. On UFC 100, who was on the undercard? One of the undercards.
Are you talking on the main card? One of the
I think it may have been a prelim, but there was a big name on the main card. John Jones was on that card.
John Jones, right? Yeah, Gleison Tebow. Okay, I believe. So, no, was it Tebow? I don't know.
So this is gonna. People are gonna be like, "Oh my god!" I've actually said a few wild things today, but
you're about to say something.
We had I am. We had John Jones, right, on the undercard or the prelims or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, and he fought. Can't remember. Brian Stan? What?
UFC 100?
100? Yeah.
No, yeah, I was wrong about Gleison Tebow. I got the names completely wrong. It was
no, I knew it wasn't Tebow.
I was thinking of Guzmão, but it wasn't even 100. It was Jake O'Brien.
Right, okay, there we go.
So I don't even know.
My point is, he was on the prelims, right? John Jones was on the prelims?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so at that time, John Jones is this great fighter who's super young and he's not even at a level where he's on the main card. Okay? UFC 300, Bo Nickel.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I like that. I think we're both in agreement that he'll be champ, so
Bo Nickel.
Assuming that happens, which is a bold assumption. But
and yes, there's so many ifs and buts and whatever else, but I believe he has the potential to go on to be one, if not the pound for pound best fighter in the world. I believe he'll go on to be champion. So if in 5 years' time we let this card marinate and we look back and go, oh my god, this is when Bo Nickel was on the flipping prelims. And then we go back and look, and we go and have a look at the greatest Chinese fighter of all time, Zhang Weili, arguably the greatest women's fighter potentially of all time at that time. Got a little while to go over Amanda Nunes. So we look back and go, oh, that was crazy. And then we go, oh, we had the bantamweight GOAT making his featherweight debut. Oh, that's kind of crazy. Oh, we had Alex Pereira, the quickest fighter to ever win 2 straps, a double champion in the UFC's history, as the main event. Oh, that's pretty flipping crazy. Oh, we had Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway fighting for a BMF belt. What the hell? That's absurd.
What even is that?
So, what even is that? We don't even have that no more. So, it's all easy to say these things now. Yeah. But if you actually let time marinate and actually let these people's careers play out, and when the dust settles and we look back at what they've all done and achieved,
revered, I think.
We will look back at these. And I'm not saying there aren't big fights in the now that we can make. I don't think we can look at that with... I think that's the strongest case I can make for that, really.
Yeah. I agree. You know, fair point. I agree. I think it's a good place to wrap it up. I wish we had more time for creative stuff. I think that was a lot of MMA to get through, to be honest, because let's be honest, this was one of the biggest cards we've had in quite a while, and we were through the trenches of some pretty dire Apex cards. So it was nice to be back on that pay-per-view. And now we got to wait another month, but it was fun. $2.99 arguably looks even more stacked.
Wow.
And that is an incredible card to get into. And then we are obviously being treated with 300. Past that, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But MMA is a crazy game. Who knows what's going to happen? This has been the MMA Creators Podcast, episode, I think we're on number 38 now. I'm Leo. That's Will. We will see you next Sunday. Cheers.